being in community with these Muslims and Jews in their work, and also that they were unified. They were finding unity in principles, ideals, and action. It's an amazing moment for her to realize that what Unitarian Universalists are trying to be and do in the world is really not that weird or hard to understand if you are in a multi-religious community where you're trying to connect across all the things that might otherwise divide us. I loved Haile Selassie's words about spirituality and religion. Haile Selassie, has started many great religious movements and impacted religious ideologies throughout the world in the middle of the 20th century. I like that idea that spirituality does not come from religion. It's religion that comes from spirituality. It comes from our soul. Spirituality does. We must stop confusing religion with spirituality. He said religion's a set of rules and rituals created by humans, which is supposed to help people spiritually. But due to human imperfection, religion has become corrupt, political, divisive, and a tool for power struggle. In the past, the long ago past, one's ethnicity primarily determined what your religiosity was about. It was wonderful to travel to Romania. I was able to go to Romania. My wife and some members of the congregation we were part of then went to the Transylvanian area and got to spend weeks around Unitarians. And there, they are part of an ethnic minority, which are Hungarian-speaking people in Romania. And then they're part of a religious minority within the Hungarians, the Unitarians. But it's very clearly their whole identity is ethnic, religious, all combined. And it gave me a new insight into the kind of work that I was doing with Black people or other people in this country. The struggle with identity. How do I fit? How do I fit in? And what is my religion? Does my religion connect me to other people, or is it unique to me and separate me? And it's about the difference between spirituality, which is our individual seeking of meaning and power, and religion, which is the way we share that with other people. It's wonderful to find meaning. It's wonderful to have insight. But to share it with others and to see it reflected in others, even across differences, to find that what was unique for me is not utterly unique, not utterly isolated in my ego and in myself. There's a power in that. In the 20th century, Unitarian, Universalist congregations, Unitarians and Universalists, and then the UUs, our purpose and our place in American culture developed in contrast to what Will Herzberg said in 1955 was the Trinity, the Holy Trinity of Protestantism, Catholicism, and Judaism. Right? Protestant Catholic Jew was the title of a book at that time. And it was clear that we were a gathering place for people who were dissatisfied with any of the established ways of being those other three, and were seeking a community, a religious community that was different, more satisfying. There were people looking for a broader, they're rejecting exclusive, divisive, narrow roads of faith, and instead seeking the broader way towards the ultimate good, centering not on unifying creeds or beliefs, but on unifying practices, on compassionate hearts and disciplined minds. However, in recent decades, American culture and global culture is going through lots of shifts and changes. There's a lot of anxiety. People are experiencing disconnection, fear, a sense of discomfort. So all the things that used to hold people in place and tell them that everything was stable and sturdy is being questioned and shifted by technology, by international relationships, changes all the time. We're feeling anxious. and feeling more disconnected. And you can see this in American politics very clearly. Disconnect, distrust, division. What is more striking is that fewer people today identify with any religion at all. In Pew Research Center's polling back in 2022, they do this on a regular basis, and I love the Pew Research Center because they're really trying to be as utterly non-partisan, non-sectarian, non-prescriptive as possible, and just create data, gather data and information through which we can come to common understanding and make better decisions. In 2022, when asked about their religion, 28% of US adults were religiously unaffiliated, describing themselves as atheists, agnostics, or simply nothing in particular. If we draw on the older model of finding religious people who are disaffected from religion and become part of our community, is that a threat that we no longer have religious people that are going to become dissatisfied, or is it an opportunity? Should there be more people who are hungry for community that we need to reach out and find and draw in? How do we catch people who are not looking for an alternative religion, but not looking for religion at all? The way in which we talk about these things, about spirituality and religion, have to shift. The way we invite people in has to shift. Remember, I saw a cartoon a couple of weeks ago. I get the Funny Times. I don't know if you know anything about the Funny Times, but it has cartoons, collections of classic single panel cartoons mostly. And one of them had the pearly gates, famous pearly gates of heaven, and a guy with a beard standing there behind a podium very much like this, and another person's walked up, and the person looks over and says, "So," the old man with the beard says, "So, how did you hear of us?" When I joined UU Fellowship in 1978, one notable feature of UU community was this tension around the use of traditional language and spirituality. This was because we had come to include atheists better than any other religious community. However, today, it's interesting that today atheists make up 4% of US adults, according to the 2023 National Opinion Reference Survey. That compares with 3% who described them as atheists in 2014, and only 2% who did so back in 2007. Around 6 in 10 atheists are male movement, and 7 in 10 are ages 49 or younger. The percentage of atheists in Western Europe is even higher, 8% in Germany, 10% in Italy, 12.5% in the United Kingdom, and 23% in France. This is part of a larger shift. When all people in America were asked which several statements came closest to their views, 73% of Americans chose, it's about ethics and morality. It is possible to be moral and have good values without believing in God. While 25% said it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral or have any good values. 2 in 10 failed to choose between either of those statements. It would seem that Unitarian Universalists provide a powerful community for people who are seeking, wandering, looking for alternative sources, broader, inclusive sources of goodness, should be numerous, transforming the world. In general, our numbers for the past half a century have been about 1 in 1,000. So not even less than 1%, like 0.08 has been our national average. Although that's been creeping up towards 0.09 or something like that. one of the other things that the Pew Research Center found out is that though people who are atheists and agnostics and non-affiliates, so the people they call the nuns, people, when you say, what's your religious preference, they say none, are growing in the United States and France. In the rest of the world, it's going exactly the other direction. There are fewer and fewer people who are willing to even share a sense of skepticism about ultimate questions. There are more and more people who are growing in their commitment to a very specific religious ideology. So that whole idea that in America there should be all sorts of people who want to be affiliate with us, which is a kind of broad and open community of multi-faith community, are less likely to find congruence in the larger world. And part of this is because over the next 4 decades, Christians will remain the largest religious group, but Islam is growing faster than any other religious identity. Islam is growing radically fast. And if current trends continue, by 2050, one generation, the number of Muslims will nearly equal the number of Christians around the world. Even in the United States, Christians will decline from being more than 3/4, 75% of the population, as they were in 2010, down to only 2/3 in 2050. Judaism will no longer be the largest non-Christian religion. Muslims will be more numerous than people who identify as Jewish in this country. I read this week a story about a guy named Stan, 2 guys, Stan and Bob. They went down, they were from in the Pacific Northwest, and they went down, because they wanted some sun, they went down to New Mexico, and they wanted to walk through the Carson National Forest, and went out on a little day hike and just got, went off trail and were wandering around and got lost. And then the sun, it was late in the afternoon, so when they started, so it got dark and it was cold. They ran out of water. They didn't bring any food along. They're wandering through these trees and mountains, and finally they hit a path, and they just realized it was too late. They couldn't see any light, so they just spent the night in trying to make some sort of shelter. And the next morning early, as the sun came up, saw the bright sun rising over the distant hills, the distant mesas. They went down and they saw a mosque, an Islamic mosque. And if any of you have been down near that area, Abiquiu, there is a mosque, Ir al-Salam. And so they saw this building, these buildings just there, and they went up, and all of a sudden Stan said, I don't know, I think we should be careful. These are Muslims. I think we need to get something from them. So I'm going to call myself Muhammad, and you call yourself Ahmed, and we'll go in, and they'll welcome us, and they'll give us food and water without any question. And Bob said, I don't know, I'm still just Bob. And so they go down, and they come in, and there's a leader, an elder there, a sheikh. Sheikhs, the elders of the community. And the elder comes up and he says, greetings. And they said, oh, we have been wandering. We're so glad to be here. We've been wandering all night. We're hungry and thirsty. We haven't had any food or water. Can you help us? And the man said, may I ask you your names? And he said, yes. Stan says, I'm Muhammad. And this, he turns, and the guy said, I'm just Bob. And the sheikh says, wonderful. He calls out to people in the mosque, and he says, please bring our friend Bob here some food and water. And then he turns to Muhammad and says, I'm forgetting the little phrase. Oh yeah, it's Ramadan Kareem. Ramadan Kareem, which basically means happy Ramadan. He says, we will break fast with you in only 10 hours. in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious world, it helps to understand people better, to reach across the things that we think divide us and come to deeper understanding. Spiritual disciplines may vary, practices may vary, but we can all understand hunger. We can all understand thirst. So what does this mean for us? When I think about the identity of Unitarian Universalist, what it means for me, and I've been a Unitarian Universalist. I joined in 1978, and it's always been my religious identity. And one of the things I love is that younger people tend to immediately take on, they don't make these fine distinctions between my spirituality and my religion. They understand that we're all unique and individuals, and yet we have shared identities. And children will often carry the Unitarian Universalist identity into school and try to figure out what that means. What is that? I think about what it means. And then I think about my member of my congregation, the congregation I served back in Muncie, Indiana. She was Hindu. She had grown up in New Delhi. Her husband was a mathematician, and she was a shop owner in the town. And she had chosen to wear her traditional clothes. In her home, next to her kitchen, there was a little thing that looked like a pantry, but you open it up, and it had Ganesh and Rama was there. She honored these deities. She did her practice every day. It was part of her life. But she was the only Hindu-based person in that town, or about a few hundred. And then other people started coming in from South Asia, so they formed this South Asian Association. It's called SAMA, South Asian Muncie Association, and they all got together. And she was there with Muslims and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists of various sorts, and they're all gathering in this community, connecting with each other, supporting each other in a world that didn't really understand at all who they were. And she was an active member of my congregation. She started talking to me about her faith. And as I started to understand it, she was talking about the Ramadan, about the story of Rama, and how important that was to her understanding of Diwali at the beginning of October, November, beginning of the festivals of lights. And so she started selecting a passage from the Ramayana, which was like choosing a scriptural passage that she wanted me to reflect on and that she would reflect on, and we would talk about it, and then we would create a worship service together that brought in all the Unitarian Universalists, and sometimes other people would come to those services to celebrate this very Indian holiday and ritual and create a deeper sense of hope and love and trust and goodness and spirituality, despite the differences, despite the lack of understanding, a community of love and justice. All these little surveys and Pew Research things started me on this track and made me wonder, and that's where I ended. People together seeking shared understanding. Through my little electric documents, I'm coming to remind myself not to just skip ahead where my memory tells me, but I need to read my notes. Connection, beauty, bind us to all other living things, to other human beings, and to the fellowship that we have found here. So may it be. Amen. And now as we extinguish the chalice, please join me in saying traditional words printed in your order of service up on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now let's join, form a circle as we may want and can.